right, it is post-eclipse season. This is October 29th, and the sun is in Gene Key 28, and it is so fitting for what we just went through. We just went through a partial lunar eclipse, full moon in Taurus, and we're still in that frequency all through today. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. my time, the moon moves into Gemini, and we are then officially done with that energy. So we're still baking in the oven, believe it or not. And tomorrow we'll have a better capacity to talk about it. We may want to write about it. We may want to go on a walk with a friend and download the transmission, because Gemini is the energy of communication. So today, our marching orders are going to be to rest, to integrate, to keep seeing beyond the veil. And that's a perfect analogy for this time of year and for the gene key that's spotlit today. So the sun is shining on Gene Key 28, and the moon is in its programming partner, Gene Key 27, so the opposite. So let's presence the energies as we move into this transmission for Samhain. So that is the beginning of the year in the Celtic pagan traditions, and it begins with death. So isn't that interesting? Some of the ancient people knew that our beginning is death, is downward, it's a descent. So let's take that on today. We have Halloween, we have the Day of the Dead, we have the remembrance of our ancestors, we have a time when the veil is thin. So this transmission will be light because there's so much energy that's being processed that we'll get to unpack over the coming weeks and even months. I mean, this has concluded a cycle. So it's concluded an 18-month cycle, and I am exhausted from that conclusion. So how many of you are feeling exhausted? Somebody said he took a nap yesterday. I did too, and I never nap either. Exactly. Slept a lot last night. Well, that was awesome that you got some sleep. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So many of my friends texted, and even people who have had big, really successful launches, they're just like, oh my God, I'm in it. I'm processing, I'm being baked, because a new normal, it doesn't matter who you are, a new normal wants to come through you. And it begins with death. So Gene Key 28, if you are born now, you have that as your life work. So you're no stranger to the dark. How do we know which gene key aligns to this moon's energy? It's really by the date. And the programming partner is the opposite. So when we have a full moon that's opposite the sun, then we know that the programming partner is being lit up. So the programming partner for 28 is 27. And so we'll presence the energies. Gene Key 28 is the shadow of purposelessness. And isn't that ironic that the last few days, if you've been watching, I've been doing Amplify Your Purpose to Profit Facebook challenge. So there's this conversation around purpose that is part of this dark side. That's what Gene Key 28 is called, the dark side. I have so many friends with this gene key, and my mother with this gene key. So I am no stranger to the dark side. It's called embracing the dark side, even better. The gift is totality, and the city is immortality. So let me just explain the 3 levels. So when Richard Rudd received the transmission of the gene keys, what he really understood is that there's frequencies to a particular gate of the I Ching. And that gate of the I Ching is what Ra used in human design. So if you don't know any of these systems, it doesn't really matter because these transmissions, they stand alone. They come through me. I'm not literally teaching the gene keys. I'm using it as a platform to jump off because that's where the sun is shining a light. And inside of our consciousness, inside of us, in our cellular DNA, we have all these gene keys. And there's something about that that's getting lit up. So I feel like it's in the collective. So I use these transmissions to highlight our growth path because they start with the shadow. They move to a frequency called the gift. And that's when we have been able to actually see ourselves and see the shadows that are running. And then the highest frequency is this frequency of enlightenment called the Siddhi, Siddhi. And so the programming partner is the 27, which I think is so beautiful. The 27 is food of the gods, it's nourishment. It begins with the shadow of selfishness. And selfishness in the gene keys has a little twist. And that transmission comes in April. The gift is altruism, like service, the highest level of service. And the Siddhi is selflessness. So when we think about the 28 and our purposelessness, the programming partner provides this evolutionary catalyst for our way out. And so what's the evolutionary catalyst for purposelessness? Well, it's service, to be in service, to dedicate your life to service. Now, that doesn't mean serving others. We're recalibrating our idea. It can mean serving others, but it's really that your life is an expression of the totality. Your life is an expression of the kingdom of heaven within. And that's the deepest service, to embody the divine. And for this moment, when so much chaos, so many wars are happening, wouldn't it be the highest service to embody the frequency of the divine? And we'll get into that in a second. I love what Richard read presences with this gift of immortality. So the shadow of purposelessness is really the fear of death. And as far as I can tell, there's really no way around that fear. Even when we think we don't have the fear, it's just because we're not paying attention to that fear. But get a cancer diagnosis or have a near-death experience, and you will have the fear of death. You will see it. It's baked into our cells. We have a life force that wants to live. But if we realize that there are so many ways that we already die, we have to die before we die, so that we can even live. And so getting present to the ways that we die every day, the attachments that we let go of, the people we let go of, the storylines we let go of. They're all little deaths. And those little deaths, in my mind, make up the resilience to handle the big death when you ultimately cross over, because that crossing over is a letting go. Andrew Holochek, who's written so many books on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, he talks about his experience with slipping on ice. And he was saying that when he slipped on this ice as he was exiting his doorway, his hand wanted to naturally grasp the rails. And you can imagine that. And that's what that feeling is when we die. Like the rug is being pulled out from under you when you lose your physical body. And there's this grasping. I want to grasp to my memories. I want to grasp to the people. You know that there are people who cross over who don't even know that they died. One of the very first things that in the Tibetan Book of the Dead it says is that those who are witnessing tell the soul, you are dead. You have crossed over. You have left your earthly body. And this will happen to all beings. Because our mind, even our mind at death, is tricky. It's constantly trying to figure it out so it doesn't have to die. And that's the irony of the entire thing. It will never die. It just doesn't get it. So it grasps. And so this gene key is really about people who are so afraid of death that they are so afraid to live. There's deep resilience in this gene key. And so as we enter the new year, from the Celtic tradition, from the wheel of time, this is the time of the descent. And we're beginning this descent with an eclipse and a full moon. How beautiful. That's really initiating a release mechanism. After every full moon, there are these astrological mechanisms for release, every single full moon. So that's why part of our practice inside the Evolving Sisters Network and the work that I do to support embodied feminine leaders is to use the cycles of the moon to release, for the full moon and the new moon to intend, to plant some seeds. So this release mechanism is happening today. And when we add an eclipse to it, we add steroids to it. So it has been amplified. And some of us are going to feel it more than others because of the way that our personal template gets lit up during this time. So everyone is feeling an eclipse. Everyone is part of the collective of death and embracing the dark side right now. And some people won't know what to do with it. But this is why you're here, because you're here to learn a message. You're here to learn the distinctions so that you can embody a frequency that really puts you in your leadership. And that doesn't mean leader over anyone. That means the way that you live your life is in leadership of yourself. And so the gift frequency totality is about embracing it and coming into an integration. It's the union of the dark and the light. So Richard Rudd tells this story, which I find amusing because I have been digging back into the Gospels of Mary Magdalene and the Nag Hammadi texts, which are the esoteric wisdom teachings of Christ that like completely got left out of the picture in 400 and something AD when Constantine decided that he was going to legalize Christianity, make it the state religion. And then they went on this couple decade quest to figure out what's in and what's out. And of course, the patriarchy took everything out that had to do with the divine feminine and had to do with these very wisdom teachings around death. And so they fixated on shit like sin and doing good, doing right, and rules, which Yeshua had always said, do not add any more rules than what I told you to do, period, full stop. And what did they do? They added a ton of rules because that's how you keep people in control. And that's what's been happening for thousands of years. And we are here to break that. We are here to midwife its death through the awareness in our consciousness of a new way of living. I'm excited about that. And sometimes we get to take a break because it's exhausting to keep activating ourselves, to keep letting go. So Richard Rudd talks about this archetypal story of good and evil, which shows up with the story of Lucifer, this angel that was so loved by God, like the favorite of God, getting cast out because he said these words of, I want to be like God. This is in the I'm going to call it the mythological teaching. So that's the beginning of that story of betrayal, the archetypal story of betrayal that is seeded throughout our hero's journey. So he said, there is a higher mythic meaning behind this betrayal. And I love it. He says, evil is simply everything about life that has not yet been accepted and embraced. And that's an interesting thing to contemplate. This isn't about being right or wrong. It's really about contemplating and feeling through your embodiment what is true about this. The only misinterpretation of the old legends is seen in the battles between good and evil, in which good triumphs. The ancient symbols and images of dragons being killed is a projection of the 28th shadow. So the 28th shadow just wants to kill off the evil stuff, right? It's this whole archetypal journey of good prevailing over evil. It's binary, it's dual, it's black and white. I mean, have you ever noticed how the bad people are just really bad? They have no redeemable qualities whatsoever. They don't love their children. They eat them for dinner. Our psyches need them to be 100% bad. There was a movie that won the Oscar, I think maybe, I'll probably get this wrong, 2006 maybe. It was Crash. And I loved that story because it was so gray. The bad guys, you didn't know that the bad guys were bad until you already liked them. And then you got to see that they were actually criminals and did really bad shit. But until then, you actually liked them because they were human beings. So it was this story about navigating the gray. And so he says, only in this way can he fulfill the myth of transmuting Lucifer's true essence into a force even higher than himself, thus revealing. Oh, I skipped the end. Here it goes. In the end, okay, so that was the projection of the 28th shadow. In the end, the Archangel Michael, who represents the good, and this is the reinvention Richard Rudd has of this myth and this tale. So Archangel Michael, who represents the good, must embrace Lucifer in his arms rather than killing him. Didn't that happen in Star Wars? Only in this way can he fulfill the myth, by transmuting Lucifer's true essence into a force even higher than himself, thus revealing Lucifer as God himself. I mean, like, bam. So turn that whole biblical teaching on its head. He says, this is how the Christian myth really should read. Many other more ancient myths from other cultures describe the very same dynamic. So really, this is what we're seeing play out in the world stage right now, as evinced in that just very long war and disagreement between people of the same tribe, really, but different religions in the Middle East, just fighting it out as if I exterminate every single person on the other side, I will have my freedom. And we already know that their chains are internal. They will never have freedom. And so this message is a message of embracing that dark. What if one person decided that they were going to embrace their enemy? And that's happened. We have so many stories floating around on YouTube about prisoners and people who were wronged, and the forgiveness that they extend to that person who committed the crime. I mean, all across the board, all kinds of people. And those people don't make it to the news. But those people are the ones transmuting this dark energy and using that dark energy for the light. And so what we get to see in this ring of illusion, this is Gene Key 28's part of the ring of illusion, that the fear of death and the fear of dying is truly an illusion. That who and what we really are never dies. And so every day when we connect to that part of us, that true essence of us, then that's the thing that when we slip, we on that ice, on our final ice slipping, and we go, yeah, maybe there's a moment of panic, but maybe there's not. Maybe your mind is so trained that it goes right there. It goes right to the totality, right to the immortality. I mean, you'd be surprised what this kind of spiritual growth, it may not seem that you're getting anywhere, because you might still get pissed off when someone cuts you off in traffic or whatever. You might not see the fullness of your growth, but there will be a time when it will reveal itself to you. I remember when I was in my 30s, I was walking on a hike that Karen here loves to hike. It was right by where I used to be next door neighbors to Karen. And I used to walk that hike. She walks that hike. And I was on that trail with my dog, and someone walked up to me and pushed me. I was on the phone with my friend, and I said to my friend, call 911. Somebody just pushed me. And then I hung up the phone, and something else came over me. And I was super new on the path. I mean, I can't attribute it to any kind of deep maturity. I just was on the path and going through my own stuff. And just instinctually, I got up and I said to the guy, and I grabbed his hand, and I said, do you realize you just pushed me? And he said, I am so sorry. I got really freaked out that your dog was off a leash, because my dog is aggressive, and I just didn't know what to do. I was like, so you push me? But it was that moment that I was really surprised. So after the exchange, I went home and just sobbed, because it was so much energy running through me. But it's like, that's that slip, that it doesn't take much, but your awareness starts to shift. And when it really freaking matters, something's going to come out of you that will even surprise you. And you'll be like, damn, wow, I just did that. So hold space for you to be that person in the middle of all the humanness that happens. I'm not enlightened, I still have all these things that I deal with, but I can trust myself, because I'm cultivating an interior that is, I guess I would say that it's died to itself. It's died to its ego. It's died to attachments. Even when it hasn't, there's a part of me witnessing it. So that's what I invite for you, to really use this time to see what it is you haven't been willing to see, because this is a beautiful release moment that we're in today. It's truth. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank you, Veronica. I love that. Yeah, it's just truth. So cultivating this relationship with truth in your body. You know it when you feel it. And so keep moving toward that, because I suspect that in the most disconcerting of moments, when we lose our physical body and we lose our grounding and we are flying, and Andrew Holochek says, if you can do some lucid dreaming and actually fly in your dream, you're going to start even cultivating more and more of that ability to just go. Like they say in any medicine journey, if you've ever done any plant medicine, and I've asked many shaman, like, how do you do this without being so scared or anxious? And he's like, you just let go. You don't fight it. You just let go. So in the many ways that we don't fight life and we just let go, and we get practice every single month with a full moon. What are we letting go of now? And then we get to implement that. As Gemini comes on the scene, it'll be like, all right, let's talk about it. And then let's start moving it into action. Let's start moving it into our new normal. And so in our mind's eye today, in our heart center today, let's just embrace those who are fighting, who believe that killing their enemy will get them somewhere. Let's just hold them deeply in our hearts. It's like a child that's raging out. And when you hold that child and you don't let go, all of a sudden its nervous system calms in your arms. And let's imagine that we are doing that, holding the people who are fighting. And so let's rub our hands together. We're going to end this transmission just gathering all of this positive energy, this transmutative energy, and feeling just the deep gratitude of the awareness that we have for this life. And then let's beam this healing energy out from our hands to all the people in conflict right now, whether it's personal conflict or it is collective tribal conflict. My tribe is better than your tribe. Any of those really low shadow frequencies, we just beam our light to them and we hold them. And we invite them through our presence to let go, to forgive, to know that their safety and their love is necessarily tied with the safety and love of their brother and sister on the opposite side. And that we hold the frequency of totality, that there isn't even an opposite side. And bringing your hands together, may all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts. Namaste.